Before we get into another great episode of the show, I wanted to say thank you to all of you who have gone over to Bed of Nails using our link and checked out all of the acupressure products that they have. You can still get your Nourished 15% off discount now through February 15th. So you might want to think about that for a Valentine's Day gift. Amazing health benefits from acupressure mat. This is the best one. So head over to Bed of Nails and check it out. And if you decide that you want to get something over there, use Nourished 15 and get 15% off. And thank you to all of you who have done that. That supports our show, and we are so grateful. What a fun conversation I had with my colleague and friend, Heather Crimson. Heather is also a quantum health clinician with a background in mental health. So she and I could talk all day about all kinds of things related to quantum health and mood and stress. So we go into a lot of that. You can find Heather at Enlightened Mood. You can check out her website, go over to Instagram and follow her. She's also the co-host of the podcast, The Quantum Connection. You can check that out too. So hopefully you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed talking with my good friend, Heather. Heather, I'm so excited to talk to you again. You're always one of my favorite people to talk with about all things, including quantum health, but all things. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit. I know that you and we've also done a live on Instagram, so people could go find that live. I think I kept it up on my Instagram page, and we did, I guess, about a year ago,
Mhm.
probably.
Yeah,
We
has it been that long? Oh my
I
goodness.
it maybe it wasn't quite that long, but I think it was actually maybe not quite a year. But you and I also recorded a chat that we had, and it's on my YouTube channel, so people could go back to that. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to just tell people how you came to quantum health, applied quantum biology, just refresh people of how you made it here. And you and I both have a background in clinical mental health. So I think we always talk about all things nourishing to the body, mind, soul. Naturally, that's the kind of
Yep.
conversations you and I like to have. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So what my question is always, what is it that helps us to be our most nourished self and our most true self, right? And so my history, I look at it as a journey from disconnection, chaos, and struggle to now feeling more whole, more integrated, more grounded, all the things we kind of want, right? Nourished, well nourished, and more aware. Because I think a lot of it just hinges upon awareness and learning. Because when you're in survival mode, like I felt like I was most of my life, you're not really aware of much other than what's immediately in your vision of safe or not safe, or that
Yeah.
sort of fight or flight, though your antenna's up. And so because I grew up in such and it wasn't like every moment, but there was a lot of intense, overwhelming experiences that my nervous system went through as a little one. And how I've learned to understand trauma, and this comes from attachment with emotionally focused therapy, which I think is just the most beautiful model from Sue Johnson, is that trauma occurs when you're alone with overwhelming emotion, even if there's other people present who are supposed to be right taking care of you. And so I had a lot of this overwhelm stuck in my nervous system, which I believe that, and you also talk about this, Kelly, unprocessed emotion that's lodged in your body will create physical illness.
Right.
So I think part of what it is speaking of nourishment, like I wasn't able to take in nourishment from my environment because my whole digestive tract and my body basically, but that's where it manifested, was like frozen. So I couldn't digest food. I always had digestive upset and all the things, whatever IBS, which is that wonderful euphemism when we don't know what to do, right, in the medical system, like, oh, it's just a syndrome. Like, no, it's actually, there's a lot of things going on. So my journey is that um, just doing my thing, right? Learning about mental health, becoming a licensed practitioner, started that in 2000. I wanted to really feel like I was contributing and making a difference, but all the while still struggling with some of the things health-wise, and also the stress. Like, I love that you bring the quantum lens to anxiety and to all of the things about stress, because I always felt so stressed out. I was either, like, stressed or angry. It's like my 2 modes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which eventually burnt me out. So with the gut issues and then push, 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 right? I was pushing to get through grad school, pushing to get the hours, push, 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 and then I just eventually crashed. So I had a chronic fatigue that it didn't like come on like overnight, but within about a year or two, I felt pretty debilitated. And that was like in my late 30s, like 38-ish, right? So I think it was just a confluence of things because I really felt like I was going crazy. Like I felt depressed. I felt so anxious. I'm like, I can't sleep, right? I have no energy and I can't remember things. And then I didn't realize that then after 40, like perimenopause was starting to come online. So it's just like all this, it was like a cluster. I'm like, ah, and I didn't know what to do. And I tried so many things, right? Seeing the naturopath who prescribed cortisol tablets. Like obviously, that did nothing.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I tried so many different healing diets for my gut, like GAPS, when the long cooked broths and 2-day, simmers of the beef bone broth, and I didn't realize that I had a raging histamine problem in the mix there, right? So that's a sunlight deficiency.
Right. I do.
Um,
A circadian
and
that's mismatched. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And I didn't know about any of the circadian stuff then, but thank goodness I was sunbathing, but I didn't do the right steps and all that. I wasn't getting the early morning sun as far as I can recall. It's so fuzzy, like I can't even remember exactly. All I knew is I had to preserve the energy I had to serve my clients, and then I would go home and take a nap and to get through the day.
Yeah. And that's the thing. As a mental health practitioner, through the years, I have there have been times where I'm like, I'm supposed to be helping people who are hanging by a thread, and I'm hanging by a thread. And it's just that my thread maybe is a little longer or a little thicker, but not much.
Right.
It was just, and then that is like the secret that you have to keep
Yeah.
because you're really supposed to have it together in
Yeah.
order to be seeing people. And I just felt like that was almost insurmountable at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like you're not really able to show up in a way that is, I mean, I did a very good work. Like, I mean, my
Yeah.
practice has been full and all that, but
Yeah.
like, there was something like I was having to push still, I'm like, ugh, got to
Right.
rally to show up. And who wants to live like that? Especially when you're doing sacred work with people who they're being vulnerable, right? So, I mean, I did the best I could. We all just have to do our best in any given moment.
Right.
But what happened is I decided that I want to do like some coaching stuff, right? And like add that into the mix. So when I started feeling better, which I think was just because I was doing the sunbathing, right? And getting outside and walking my dog. Dogs are a godsend, right, for us for helping with our circadian rhythm. And then I came across they were in the same kind of coaching marketing program I was in called Clients on Demand. And they were talking about fatigue, and that was their specialty. And they were offering this very expensive package for coaching a whole course. And I'm like, oof. But I went for it. I'm like, I have to do something. Like something is telling me inside that they have something that I need to know, right? And these are two MDs who decide younger folks who decided not to get the license. I'm like, oh, that's interesting because they wanted to work out of the box, right? And so when I started their course, it was like all about circadian rhythm. I thought, oh, I've never really even thought about this. I never had any idea that this was part of what could cause fatigue. Like, who knew, right?
I know. I know. You don't know until you know, and then you start knowing. Yeah.
And they just walk through the basics, like how do you do your morning? It's all the stuff we talk about. How do you deal with EMFs? They covered all the things that affect us as energetic beings, circadian and otherwise. So as far as the non-native EMFs. And so it was like a game changer for me. I mean, that word is sort of trite, but really, it's what launched me onto the path that I'm on now. Because I realized too, Kelly, that a lot of what I've been seeing in the office for people struggling with anxiety and depression was also linked to our light environment.
Right. Right. And I know you, like me, were thinking it was gut microbiome for a long time, and we're trying to help people. And I was too, and just not realizing it is, but gut microbiome, gut dysbiosis is really when you have a disruption in your gut health, is your circadian problem. That's a
Yes.
circadian rhythms issue. That's yes, the food has some piece to play, but not nearly as much as the light and
Exactly.
the timing of when we eat and the timing of when we move our body and being social. Like we are these creatures that run on rhythms that we were all misaligned in the way that we're running our lives. And it's just phenomenal how many
Yeah.
things will show up in the body symptom wise to try and to get our attention, to try to help us get back on track. The body's doing its very best to
Mhm.
keep us alive and help us. But when you already have, as most of us do, a dysregulated nervous system, a nervous system that is challenged to get the nourishment that it needs to it, I think it's difficult because then it's like these layers that and you just cannot see that it's the simplest possible answer that will
Right.
help your nervous system.
No, I think that's obviously not helped too by the, mainstream medicine, allopathic medicine, because it's so mechanistic, right? It's like,
Mhm.
well, what part of my body and what's causing it? And you can go all over the place with that. And then we'll ends up mostly just using some kind of pharmaceutical and or maybe it's a supplement, but that's not always helpful either. If you don't have the circadian foundation, those interventions aren't going to be helpful either. So I was so desperate for sleeping, I actually took Benadryl, which is horrible for you and it causes Alzheimer's. And I thought, oh my God, hopefully I'll be okay. But then I
Right.
did
I'll
all,
just take this and hope for the best.
well,
I
because the
know.
histamine
I
issue and
know.
I wasn't sleeping for months. It was
Right.
really intense. But then
That
if you just do supplements only and you don't have the circadian piece in place, then you're not, it's almost probably making it worse. What do you think?
I probably. And I found this, I don't know if you found this, but at first I was recommending certain supplements to help, like collagen to help with the gut healing.
Right.
And people's anxiety was going up. And I'm like, wait, what's happening? This needs to go backwards. Why is this? And what I now know is that, the fascia, which is this quantum communication highway in the body that is always communicating lickety split all through the body, that it's made of mostly collagen. And so we were adding collagen. So it's almost like you're fueling the miscommunication.
Wow.
You didn't, we didn't get to the right place first and heal things. And then, maybe you add some more collagen foods or whatever, and that might strengthen. But literally we're strengthening. So you might be adding a supplement that is doing what it's supposed to do, but it's strengthening something that actually needs healing first, if
Right.
that makes any sense.
Yes, that totally makes sense. But
Yeah.
also collagen supplements, right? Those powders, I've
Yeah.
tried all those and they're very high in histamine.
Very high histamine. And that's
Very. So I would always feel 10 times worse. I'm like, this is supposed to be healthy, but now I feel horrible, right? Like
right.
something, and then we want to blame ourselves, like something's wrong with me. It works for everyone else. And
Right.
that's
That's
not
a
really how it is, though.
right. Yeah, it works for everyone else, or it should be working, or I should be doing it more. And then we just end up, yeah, and it's and then you just feel anxious and sad because nothing is working and it's just feeding that whole experience of not enough. I'm not enough. Yeah.
Right. And that's what makes people go from person to practitioner to this to that to the other, right? And spend thousands of dollars.
Yes. That's right.
So I did make a big investment to find the circadian, but I feel like that's my path and it's okay, right? Because it's gonna pay me back invaluably in so many ways, that investment that I made into myself. And so I like to look at this whole issue of what's going on with our health, whether it's, emotional or physical, which I feel like, as you probably agree, like there's no separation
You
at
can't separate
all.
that. No, that's
There's
right.
none. We're all energy, whether it's about emotional energy or physical communication in the body, it's all the same. But
Right.
it's about that disconnect, right? So we're disconnected from our environment, and not that we have to live in caves. Like I always feel like I have to say that because people are like, what do you mean? I'm just be outside all the time. Honestly, if I could get away with it, I would be outside all day long.
Mhm.
But I have to use a computer and it's not always conducive to have the whole computer outside. Um, So, and I live in California, so I can get away with more time outside because right now, like the other day, it was like 65, and it was really nice. And I was out there sunbathing, and some parts of the country are awful right there. Well, I would not like the cold, cold.
Right.
So I call that awful, but I think some people love it because now they're really working out the brown fat
Adipose tissue, baby.
in the
Yeah.
neck, right? And in the torso, which is so healthy for the certain haplotypes. But anyway, so we're disconnected from our own nature, which is we're a part of nature, right? That we need to be connecting with nature on a regular basis in order to nourish ourselves
Right.
in every way. So light signals to tell your body what to do, to give your body the materials and the energy it needs, all the things, right? Programming your neurotransmitters and hormones, balancing them out, getting your feet on the dirt or the sand or whatever to absorb those negative electrons. But also, it's not just nourishing from a quantum perspective for your body functioning, it's nourishing for your soul, which I love the name of your podcast, right? Your soul podcast.
Right. That's the point, right? It's all connected and it's all, yeah, there is no separation. And that I think it's so simple to say, well, we're just so disconnected. We're disconnected from our own nature, our own signaling, and we're disconnected from the natural environment, which gives us all the signaling that we need. And I think people are like, I don't know, that just sounds complicated. And I'm like, I don't know what about that sounds complicated other than they're afraid they have to give up the
Yeah,
way they live their life.
right. Right. No, there's definitely a whole mindset shift, right?
Mhm.
There's a huge paradigm shift because it's like, you know how it is. We're so programmed and conditioned to just go about every day doing the same things. And it's a massive pattern interrupt to go, oh, but I'm going to go outside and have my bare feet on the ground and see the sunrise. But it's a new habit that does, as you know, it takes whatever, however many days, 21 days, I think it is, to
Yep.
make that the norm for you. And now I don't feel good if I don't do these things. Like if even if I can only do it for a couple of minutes, like I'm gonna do it. Right.
Right. I think the consistency, and I just want people to understand that being in nature, even seeing pictures of nature, that is a safety signal to ourselves, that the nervous system. And I think you were saying, before we hopped on, do more of what feels good.
Mm,
And I want to go there. But sometimes you have to do some things, I think, like getting outside more, even if you really don't want to, because you've been programmed or you're more comfortable inside.
mhm.
And it seems so odd to me to even say this now because I so want to be outside as much as possible. But at first, that is going to be disorienting. And the mind gets involved and is trying to make sense of things. And it can be a little bit of, it's not just a mind shift, but you're also having to work with the mind who's trying to put you back inside, which is not where you need to be.
Right, because that's where unfortunately we start to feel more comfortable, right?
Mhm.
There's a whole thing about comfort not being helpful sometimes. There's the comfort crisis, I think the book is called, but it is true though. It's like our mind will get in the way of our own connection to our body, and we
Mhm.
don't have the ability to discern or
Yeah.
distinguish like what is nourishing to me because the mind is going, but it's cold out, or it's the ground is whatever bumpy, and I don't want to get dirty. And I mean, I used to be like that, like, oh, I'd have to wash my feet now. No, I just really don't give a crap. It's just like,
No,
"Oh,
right?
brush
Like
it
how
off, I'm
that's
good, let's
right.
go."
Like dirty
I got
feet
my
all the
nourishment.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just get more the little scrape, things that you use for your heel. Cause I notice the more I go barefoot or I have these grounds shoes that are just a leather sole, my feet are like, "Whoa." But the connection. So I love the fact that circadian biology really invites us to feel into our bodies and help us to trust our bodies, that there are no mistakes. Our body knows what it needs. Our mind can get in the way because then we want to overcomplicate things. We want to try to figure it out. No, just go outside and nourish yourself from all the frequencies, right, of the light and the earth's resonance. So that's the foundation of the health. So connecting to the environment is connecting to yourself. You're literally plugging yourself into the earth, but you're also being present with your body, right?
Right. That's the key. It's like, it's this, that is really the big shift. And we call it a mindset shift, but
I
it's
know, that's
really a
funny.
shift out of the mind into the body. Like that
Yeah.
is the into the body, and just keep going into the body. And it really is the most powerful thing I have ever done. And you and I have studied pretty much everything that there is to study because we wanted to be, the best therapist we could possibly be. And so you and I both have studied trauma techniques and all kinds of breathing and movement and all the things, and nothing moved the needle. Just like being outside, what I we used to call grounding, just being present. So I call it earthing more now,
Yes.
because in our world, in the psychotherapy world, grounding means something a little bit different. So literally connecting yourself to the earth's surface, touching trees, touching leaves, feet on the ground, whatever it takes to be reconnected. You're literally docking yourself and recharging your entire body when you do that. Not just the light is crucial, but also that docking the body. And there is nothing, I don't know for you, but there's nothing that has been even close to the same as doing that.
Not no, same here. Just the smells of nature, the sounds of the birds and whatever is happening in nature, are the most nourishing for me, right? Like, I literally crave that. I also crave to be able to go somewhere where it's really quiet. There's not cars and, whatever, horns and stuff. That's a little harder to pull off unless you literally drive yourself somewhere into the middle of nowhere, but I want to do that. To have the sense of this full peace and communion with nature with no sort of man-made interference except for my car, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, how can we bathe ourselves in this sensory experience of the energy of nature to calm our nervous system? I think that's really the best way to fortify yourself,
Yeah.
to like you said, plug yourself in and do the earthing so that you're grounding yourself in your terrain, right? That's the most nourishing to your body. And to be able to linger in these sensory experiences out in nature and really be present with what is it you're taking in. Yes, because that's the connection happening. That's you becoming more present with yourself and all that is, right? And I think that I like to also link it to attachment because I've done a lot of work in attachment, some with kids, but mostly with couples, and it's so powerful, right? So I know that what we need is to feel connected to our environment, but we're also tribal, we're also social mammals. We need to be able to feel connected with others. Yes. And
Mm.
so that's the other half of this for me. There's half of it is the quantum circadian, and the other half is the quantum, all the heart stuff. Like we
Mm.
need our tribe, our people, our special person who we're safe with, because that's also where we get safety. And
Mm.
I am thinking that, Kelly, tell me what you think. The more nourished we are
Mhm.
by using circadian practices and all the quantum practices, it allows us to open our hearts more
Yeah.
to, say, for example, our partner and have the fortitude and it's not vitality, it's more like that you're fortified, you're strengthened enough to be able to be vulnerable. Because the best quality relationships are based on emotional connection and vulnerability, the emotional bond. What do you think about that?
That makes perfect sense to me, and that makes sense in my own life, just
Yeah.
noticing. And I think I thought that was happening when I was really focused on the nutrition. Like, just things were working better, and when things work better in the body, the hormones are all more balanced, I guess is what was happening. But the what happened when I added the circadian piece, and I started really paying attention to supporting my circadian rhythms and the mitochondrial health. But then you are fortifying yourself, and you become not only more open and receptive, but
Mhm.
I communicate differently than I
Mhm.
did before that. There's a much more, and I was into vulnerability before. So, like I thought I was, into vulnerability, and there's just a difference. It's really a subtle, I mean, everything's frequency, right? So there's a different frequency to the way that I communicate now, and
Mm,
the ability to open up to receive and give in a
yes.
way that is so much more loving and not as judgmental and, critical or judgmental or whatever was very kind of common for me to just feel. There's a
Think about
different.
it, if we're not nourished, if our nervous system is struggling or our body is deficient in energy, we can't soften, what I call softening. We can't be more open. We can't receive because we're like all, agitated and we're struggling inside. And so that friction, that negative, well, I don't want to call it negative, but that chaotic energy, if you will,
Yeah.
our partners feel that because we're always pinging off each other. There's a toroidal field, our brains are communicating, right? So there's all this stuff happening within and between us. And because you know how it is, if like your partner's got an issue or mood, we instantly feel that.
Mhm.
So our partner can feel our unsettledness inside and our struggle and then our negative thoughts or whatever. So nourishing ourselves from the inside out and connecting to all that is when you're out in nature, I think it fills our cup so much. It's not
Yeah.
about food at all. That is the food.
That is the food.
Then
That's
we
what's
then we can open up.
right. And when we linger there, I love that you're talking about lingering, because all the mindfulness training in the world, just to be present, but to be really present in that kind of thoughtful way in nature where you're really taking in. Now when I'm in the light, because it doesn't have to be a beautiful day to get the light frequencies, but when it is a beautiful day and the sun is shining, it's almost like you're eating it. Like I want to lap it up because I just love what it's doing for my body. And I know that all those frequencies are helping to coordinate the symphony in my body. So I know lingering in that is just helping me on every level.
Mhm,
So I like the lingering. The lingering is a
mhm.
keeper.
Yeah, you linger to lap it up and just absorb as much as possible, help your body to feel calmer, more fortified, because there are gonna be things that come up, right? We wanna enhance our resilience because
Right.
things
That's right.
happen, right? So it's that dynamic sort of, I don't know what Jack Kruse calls it, but it's like he says do you remember the phrase? It's like he describes nature as always being an imbalance. I'm like, huh? It's one of those quantum things where there's always this sort of like right shifting. And that's us being able to be with whatever is happening and
Mhm.
navigate it from a place of feeling nourished and resourced where we're not like reacting so much.
That's right. That's exactly it. Mhm. And I just did a class on circadian rhythms, and what was really, because you study this stuff, you talk to people, any client that's willing, I will talk to the clients about it, right? But then to teach it, I was layering in how important it is that our body is made. This is how we adapt. This is how, if you were to leave California and go somewhere cold, your body would go, "Oh, cold now."
Yeah.
And would start to make these adjustments so that you would be more resilient and could handle whatever was in your natural environment. Like we are made like that. And when
Mhm.
all of that signaling is off already, and the nervous system is not nourished. And so it's chaotic. That's the
Yeah.
perfect way to. And when we first started talking, you said I was either anxious or angry. Like I was in this like kind of chronic chaos. And then when all that starts to calm down and you do feel fortified and nourished, your body naturally has the ability to adapt.
Yes.
That's what we're after. And it's
Yes.
not so effortful, because I feel like everything felt so effortful before I realized applied quantum biology.
No, there's definitely more ease and flow. It's really, really amazing. Like, how does this happen? Just nourish your body with the energy frequencies, and you're gonna have things be easier. Like, really? Not always, but most of the time, things like I'll just boom, boom, boom. Where I used to be like, oh God, I have to do the laundry. It was almost like I'm dragging myself around like this, reluctant, sort of bitter. And I'm like, what is that about? Well, I mean, there's a real reason that people feel that way. First is a lot of unprocessed emotion, possibly, right?
right?
So we got stuff stuck in there, but also then now I'm compromised because I'm not getting the nourishment I need. No wonder people struggle so much. I mean, really think about like
Right.
how much of a disadvantage we're working or the lack of the basic materials that we need in order to feel good.
Right. And really, what I've come to now is helping people because in order to change and transform your life, you have to have energy.
Yes.
Right? And so we were trying to have, and I think doing a good job. I'm not saying that we weren't doing a good job before we started adding these principles, but I think, in order to help people really transform on a cellular level, they've got to be able to make enough energy
Yes.
to make that transition.
Well, yeah. So because otherwise you're going to be in more of just a reactive, you're going to be having to do
Mhm.
more coping, whether
Yeah.
that's TV or food or whatever, right? And
Mhm.
so this kind of leads me to the next sort of phase, if you will, of what happens when we attend to our needs in an energetic way is
Yes.
that when you like you were saying, which is so beautiful earlier about how you feel more open and more right with your partner, for example, we find our voice.
Oh,
You
that's
cannot
true.
find your voice that easily and have the courage, which takes a lot of energy, to then know what you want. Because especially women, like it's really hard for some of us to know what we want because we're so busy with the struggle with having to do all the things. And then we want to take care of everyone else and da da da. And we don't think about, wait a minute, what is it I really want? And how do I articulate that? That's a big deal for women, right? And so we have when we're well nourished and we actually are saying, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm not going to do these other things anymore, or whatever you decide to do, right? That's like revolutionary for some people. Right?
Right. And that's what I think all been told to do. And that's what you're trying to do in your therapy. And if you're not really nourishing yourself on that basic level, that's going to be really challenging to do.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with
Well, because
that.
it's like a big deal to stand up for yourself that way.
That's
Right.
right, to find your voice. And it feels like it just naturally starts to happen. Like,
Yes.
it's not something you're trying again, it's that effortful versus it feels more effortless. So
Yeah.
even though Jack is saying, that nature is always kinda out of balance trying to get itself back in balance, like, there's a natural flow to that
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. It's in a dynamic flux or something to that effect. But also it's like in order to really be able to
Yeah.
fully actualize your desires, for example, your
Mhm.
passion, because I mean, just think about it. Our world would be very different if people were more content and if people felt more safe. And right, there's so much chaos in the world and some crazy stuff happening. But it takes energy to have the courage to say what you want. Yes, and to claim or to be like to own that it's okay for me to feel really good. I don't have to be blissed out all the time. We have to have the dark and the light. There's that always going to be that, the good and the bad. That's
Right.
just the way that it is. But it's like, how can I every day privilege feeling good enough and being in a nourishing, right, experience? Because really, I think what we all want is to have the experience of it being meaningful for us, our life.
Right, exactly. I think I just was hearing that yesterday, the word prosper. The prosperity is really to have whatever your hands are into, whatever you're doing matter. Like to
Yes.
be like at some point that it's actually mattering. That is what it means to prosper. And what I love is that so much is free that of this nourishing yourself from nature.
Yes.
Yes, we can some of it takes time and it takes a consistency and those kinds of things, but there's so much that can be done that's just literally doesn't cost you anything.
Exactly. It's all right there. Just go outside.
Just go outside. But
Go
then
outside.
how does this work with your clients? Like what are your clientele?
Okay.
Because you and
Yeah.
I both have been in this shift away from more kind of traditional psychotherapy and working with trauma and then where have you landed?
Well, I'm definitely phasing out of therapy. So it's probably by the end of next year, I'll be fully
Mhm.
done. And mostly, and this isn't to say that I am disappointed at all, and not there's not much receptivity. It's because they didn't sign up for
Right,
it.
exactly. Right, exactly.
I'm
Right.
changing the agreement if I'm like, "Oh, but wait a minute, there's this cool thing you can do." That's not fair, right? So, I put it out there, Kelly, and then it oftentimes is like, "That's nice, Heather. I'm listening 'cause I like you." I'm like, "Okay, that's fair." And then it's like, "But let's go back to what I wanna put." Okay. So, I don't usually, bring it up that much unless I'll just mention it and then I test, like, are they receptive or they're like, "No." And I obviously respect, what it is they want to do. So, my passion is though, is to be able to, like you, bring this information to the world
Right.
so that we can empower more people to get out of feeling crappy physically, crappy mentally and emotionally, to be able to be inspired because they're now nourished and fortified to show up in the world in a way that is meaningful to them.
Right. And what's interesting to me is that then you can actually do a lot of the deeper work in therapy. But I
Yes.
found the same thing is that people didn't sign up for talking about, circadian and food and those kinds of things. And so that became it was just a little too challenging for me. So I switched too. And I
Yeah.
love that that's our passion, and you have a podcast too, and
Yes.
I thank you for having me on your podcast, The Quantum Connection, right?
Oh, yes. Thank you. The Quantum Connection with my co-host Vanessa Baldwin.
Right, and Vanessa is coming on the show too, so it's that people will get to know both of you, but I just think the more people I don't know if you've heard this from folks in your life that were like, "Well, you really should drop quantum because nobody understands what that means." And to feel so passionate about this is literally the way that back to health and vitality and nourishment. I don't wanna call it anything else, but I don't know, maybe
No,
what do
I
you
I feel like I am gonna be stubborn and I'm gonna say it. It's, the irony there, Kelly, is that as an early therapist, I was very unaware and uneducated, and I was unfamiliar with the energy healing, right?
Mhm.
Oh, that's just woo. I'm gonna do real work in therapy. Like, I had the worst attitude. I didn't know any better, and I just poo-pooed all that stuff because, like, I'm doing the real healing here because 'cause I'm doing therapy. It's like, what a bunch of crap. I didn't realize that they're actually really working with energy fields, and it all started like making sense to me when I finally figured it out and started learning about quantum principles or quantum whatever it is, mechanics. Not that I'm a science, nerd, but that no, this is a real thing and this is totally legitimate. There's many people who benefit from whatever kind of, sound healing, that kind of stuff, right? Which is amazing.
Right,
Amazing stuff.
right,
Um, so I want to use quantum because that's really what we're talking about is the energy.
right. It really is it's not that complicated, and somebody was just a friend of mine was like, "I think you should either rebrand that or call it something else," and I was like, "Yeah, aren't people curious?" I was
Right.
I was curious, you were curious, like, maybe you have to get to a certain place in your journey where you open up, you're more open and receptive, your heart opens up, but if you're truly interested in transforming, like,
Yeah.
this is the key. Like, these
Yeah.
are the key or the foundational pieces to help you make that happen. So, yeah, I'm sorta stubborn in that way too. I was like, "Well, they'll" and I don't wanna be I mean, I like Jack Cruz now, but I remember when all the cool kids were following Dr. Jack Cruz, and I did not know what that man was saying. I had 0 idea, and I was like, "I'm not following this dude. I don't know what he's talking about." And then the more you actually clean your brain, you start to understand what he's saying. You're like, "Oh," and, I wanna make it practical for people. I'm not like Jack saying, "I'm not dumbing this down for you. Nature doesn't dumb it down."
Right. Right.
I wanna dumb it down, not dumb it down that people need to be I want it to be accessible. I want it to
Yes.
be something that people can be even if you don't understand what the words mean, you're inspired enough to go, "Well, I'm curious now.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
how can this help my life?" Right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well,
yeah.
metaphors are good for that. I always wanted to have better metaphors. And some people are so good at that. I'm like, oh, I get it now. So I want to cultivate that. I think, well, you're an English major. You should have great metaphors, but I kind of miss that piece. But that's what helps people, right? Is
Right.
like give them an example that they can relate to. And I think, it's like love. Love is an energy. And
Yeah.
we have a hard time defining it. It's hard to define these concept, right? Well, what is God? Da, da, da. It's really just this sense. Part of it is we feel it, we sense it, and then
Mhm.
we have the mental aspect of I believe this. So if somebody's ready to receive this information about quantum biology, then they'll be ready. And I
Right.
think that we have a huge growing momentum. I mean, I just see so many more people going, oh, and interest. There's more of people coming on board with like, let me check this out. This might have something good for me. This might be the missing piece. And so this is going to work in our favor to help. I want to just really help people heal so we can have a
Same.
more harmonious world.
Right. Same. And I really feel like mental health is going to have to get on board and realize that so much of what's going on with what we call mental health
Yeah.
is an energy. It's lost energy. It's an energy problem. It's a circadian problem. This
Yes.
is the key that we've all been trying to find. So I'm excited that we're here to help bridge the gap, move it forward, whatever it is that
'Cause
we're
there's
doing.
a small part of us or a percentage of us who are doing the more focused on mental health. So we have to work together. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
love it's so fun to communicate with you because you did all the same training I did, and so we know what we're talking about, and we know what was missing, and um, where we're trying to go with people, which I think is super exciting. So, is there anything that we missed? Anything that's nourishing your body, mind, soul these days that you really wanted to talk about?
I think I covered it mostly is that what is it you are longing for? Your
Mhm.
body will always tell you.
Right.
Tune into your body. Your body has all of the answers as to what it needs for nourishment emotionally, physically, if you want to categorize it, it always knows. So I always try to be very aware of what is happening in my body. And people are like, well, what do I actually look for? Look for sensation. I get so many rhetorical questions, right? When I'm working with people. And I'm like, ask yourself and see what comes up. So tune inward and ask your body what it needs and ask your heart what it needs because you're going to get the information. Most of the time, it's that we're afraid to actually listen because it means we might have to make some changes in our lifestyle and or relationships or whatever it is, right? Career. And it's scary to do
That is true. That that it can be scary to do that, which is why I think we're not meant to do that alone
that.
because
Exactly. Yes.
it is we are tribal people and we are meant to make this step forward. Any change or transformation is a step into the unknown,
Yes.
and it is very scary to step without some support. So I think having the support in place, whatever that might look like for people, that can look different for different
Well,
people.
I'm glad you're saying that. So just to end with it, like we have to have community and be witnessed and speak our truth there and get some validation or acknowledgement of our existence and that we matter, like you were saying earlier.
Right.
Um, so we do need that. So it's like finding safe community in order to, right, just speak up about what matters to you or what's happening to
Right.
you is so powerful.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts of people are listening and thinking, well, I don't have that kind of support. I don't, I can't afford a therapist or what, just some talking about how to find your community. Cause I found that the community, as you're changing, the community kind of finds you. Like if you're, but I'm still in my same life with all the same people.
Right.
And I'm very different. So there is a transition period which feels very awkward and alone.
Mhm.
And how do you find your community?
Well, they listeners are welcome to reach out to you or me. We can probably give them some suggestions. I'm actually thinking about of developing a offering where it's about here's the quantum biology piece and circadian rhythm. Here's the rest of it, right? That we have to have both the connection to others to self, to work on the emotional blocks, yes, which honestly, most of them are developmental injuries from family of origin stuff. Let's be honest. Like it's
Right.
not all like just
Exactly.
car wrecks kind of trauma. And we need to be in a safe space with having relationships with others, being witnessed and whatnot to heal that. So, and it's not therapy. This is humanity. Like I want to make that clear. Like I'm
Right.
so tired of like, well, that's therapy and you can't do that. It's like, I'll just give up my license if I need to. Like, I don't care anymore. I want to help people to express their humanity, not in a victim way, but like, here's where I'm struggling, or, get some support in a group setting. So Kelly Croft and I have been conducting a group. I think you're aware of that. It's going beautifully. So based
Nice.
on
Yeah.
what I'm experiencing with that, a group of women, to be able to have an offering like that. Now, maybe it's going to be people were like, no, that's too scary, but that's okay. I just want to try and put it out there. So I'm going to start talking about that in my on my social media.
I think that's great. I think that's really needed. I love Kelly. So I think you and Kelly doing a group sounds just amazing to me. That sounds like a really supportive community that you're building there, and I think that's the best way. I'm in that process of figuring out what's needed, what skills do I have,
Yeah.
and what technology is available now that we could create these communities where
Yes.
we have offerings that actually help people in these very foundational and then beyond ways. I think that's beautiful. I think that's where
Erin,
we're headed.
I absolutely agree.
Mhm.
Erin Gunzelman she just launched a community. So if people are interested in consciousness, that's where I would send them because she's amazing. Carrie Bennett has a community. It's all focused on the health aspect, physical and whatever. So that's a lovely community. I want to have a community where we are like they can learn about the quantum biology piece and the circadian piece, but also then now let's tend to your soul, let's nourish your right
Exactly.
heart and whatnot. So we'll see what
Right.
that looks like. It's like, oh, Kelly, I'm jumping off into the unknown. Like, oh, what's that going to look like? How am I going to do it? Where, what am I going to do?
I that's why I'm look, we you and I need to stay in constant contact because it sounds like we're in that same place of wanting to offer that and what that might look like. So I'm
Mhm.
excited to
Yeah, let's talk.
yeah,
We'll talk
of course we'll
offline about that.
offline. Yeah. I love it. So I will make sure that people know how to find you and
Okay.
come to your website. Anything else that you wanted to mention that of how people can find you? That
Oh, just enlightenmood.com, the Nourish Connection, or the the Quantum Connection podcast. Those are the main ways. And then Instagram, it's at Heather Crimson, like the color red.
right. And we all like to hang out on Instagram. That seems to be the place where we all like to connect. So yeah, that's a good place. Good place for people to come find you. So Heather, thank you so much for your time. I've loved it as always talking to you.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me on. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
anytime. We just keep you coming back.
Okay, sounds good.